Welcome to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today.
With Halloween just around the corner, we've got a scary story for you today. Imagine harvest is moving along well, yields are awesome, the crop is dry and ready to go. And then something breaks. It's frustrating, but you should be back up and running in 24 hours. So you call the local dealership to source the part and fix it. What happens next would have been unheard of pre-pandemic, but is all too common today. The part you need is nowhere to be found in the entire country. And not only that, but there are no rental combines within a 100-mile radius. Your 250 bushel corn harvest is now at a standstill.
Unfortunately, this scary story is not that far-fetched in today's day and age. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have continued to ripple out and affect us in a variety of ways. And one of those impacts you've probably been hearing about, or maybe even experienced yourself recently, is the delay in the supply chain. I keep hearing if we don't start ordering our Christmas gifts now, they might not arrive in time or even be available. But this challenge is also affecting farmers during harvest and will likely continue into spring. So today we've got Dr. John Fulton. He's a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Biological Engineering at Ohio State University. And he's joining us to discuss this issue and help you be prepared to deal with it if it arises. So John, could you take a moment here and introduce yourself to our listeners?
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Elizabeth and Amanda, so thanks for having me. But yeah, John Fulton, and primary responsibilities at Ohio State are conducting research, extension in and around precision ag topics. And so primarily background is in machinery automation at the farm level, and then, using some of that data that comes off the machines to translate into some information that farmers can find as usable in decisions and making adjustments within the farm operation.
How real is the concern for agriculture?
It's become a real issue, Amanda. We're here in midstream of our harvest for the year. Getting parts. You told your scary story, but that's a real thing. I mean, getting parts that stem from augers possibly to hoses, and anything that seems like made from rubber tires are becoming a limit to get access to, but keeping the machine running and having parts and that parts accessibility has become a real issue. Some of those parts aren't available, we'll say out of stock, to the shortages. There is a part, but it's several states away, and so those things are real. And I want to emphasize that while we're talking a lot about combines and even tractors and grain carts that are operating out there, in particular combines, it's really influenced people's behavior at the farm today. And I would tell you that even custom operators or a farmer that farms and does some custom operation, I mean, the focus is anyone I talk to in that situation where I've got my own land or my own crops that get harvested and doing some custom, 100% feedback, regardless of the state I've talked to. That includes Iowa, South Dakota folks. They're going to get their stuff harvested first before they think about doing anything else, because they are just totally concerned about a combine or a harvester going down and not having parts available to get that machine back running.
I think the other concern is it's not just parts. If you have something go down and there's a delay in getting it repaired, there's a real shortage of machines to be able to get a loaner machine at this point.
Yeah, I would suspect in our lifetime, all three of us sitting here, when's the last time you went by not only an equipment dealership, but think about car dealerships today. I mean, you go, you pass by them and there's very few, piece of equipment. And that goes down to even mowers and smaller equipment, not just, large equipment like we were talking about combines, but it's pretty sparse in terms of availability. There is some used stuff out there, but again, what kind of shape is it in? Equipment's limited. We talk about trucks and vehicles being limited today, and then we add in those parts thing. It can be a very much of a challenge for someone that may have a machine that's having some issues and they're kind of limping along, or they're down. It's what do I do? How do I handle this situation? Because I'm of the viewpoint that we're going to have a bumper crop here in the United States, no doubt about it, and we may break a record here in Ohio as relates to corn. That wouldn't surprise me one bit, and our bean crop's pretty good too. In fact, they're projecting, at least in the U.S., we may have a bumper, bean crop. So we got a lot of crop out there, but how are we going to get this harvested and keep those machines running with all this issue that's kind of come to the forefront here?
So take us through where the breakdown in the supply chain is occurring. I think it's multiple points, but can you share with us what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I'd see there's a convergence of several things going on, and a lot of this potentially could be related to the pandemic, but we are here in the fall here of 2021. So number one, from a supply chain issue, without a doubt, getting parts and sourcing parts, from other countries and getting those into the, through typically cargo ships, that there's a backlog of getting stuff here, getting it unloaded, and ultimately transported across the country. And embedded in all that is as well is the shortage of labor. And so transportation is high because of some of that. And that's related, in my opinion, to two things. We got fuel prices have gotten very high, number one. But secondly, we got limited folks to drive trucks and be part of that transportation chain, and that's really caused a backlog in itself. So if you use Amazon, for example, there's things that we used to be able to get overnight, but now it might take a week to get, at least that we've had. That's been my personal experience, and a lot of that deals with transportation issues, that we just don't have enough people to work in that. And then so we got that. We got trying to get parts, and that includes these chips and anything made from semiconductors into the country to from these other that are being imported as an issue inside the country. We got labor shortages, and so it's not only in the transportation. Recently, everyone probably saw and heard about, we got John Deere workers going on strike. We see plants idling. I mean, CNH just recently announced, at least in Europe, they're putting plants on idle because of supply chain concerns and stuff. And so we got all this stuff happening. And so just making parts, making equipment, we've got a lot of equipment that's built, to be honest with you. It's kind of like the automobile industry. People have probably read, there's a lot of trucks that were built this year, but unfortunately those trucks were all waiting on chips. And now we're already into the 2022, thinking about the 2023 builds. And so we're past that. And so my point in all that is there's combines that I know about that have been built from these manufacturers waiting on 2 or 3 different parts to be put on them for them to be brought into and be sold into our normal supply chain. And so there's a lot of things going on in terms of supplies that goes to parts, that goes to new parts that are being, used in tractors and combines. And it's really becoming a concern. And, I'll end on this as a point. All the John Deere planters, for example, that were shipped this year, it was, again, this was out in the press, were shipped. They were built, but the one thing they weren't shipped with was displays. And so that was this year. Okay. So thinking about, the next build and ultimately into 2023, what does that mean when we have all these supply? Because we're getting beyond the chips, we're getting down to rubber-based products and other things. Availability of those. So we got some mechanical pieces as well that are starting to limit our build on some of this equipment.
How far reaching do you think this problem is going to end up being? Because when you look at, you talk about machines that are sitting that can't be completed due to parts, but already starting to build, newer model machines, when those chips or parts come in, are they going to prioritize those new machines? What happens to the 2021 built combines I saw a video on Twitter of, it seemed like maybe 100 just sitting there unable to be used.
That's the question. Ultimately the companies are going to have to make decision on prioritizing. Without a doubt, here currently they're trying to build what they can with what they've got access to. And for us, some of us, we know technology is an important ingredient to operation of that equipment and how we run our operation. We think about all the precision ag. Those are real concerns. Having a display for a planner and operating it becomes a concern. It's pretty far reaching, and there's two components to that, Elizabeth. Number one, time. I don't see this kind of getting back to business as normal coming very quickly. No doubt about it. If you read the press, whether it's farm press or just looking at common purchases that were out there, like I was mentioning on Amazon, those are definitely, it's projected into 2022 and definitely going to affect 2023. I don't know where we're going to get, when the turnaround's going to be that we get, our transportation, we get our supply chains back up and, we'll say at a significant level to help resolve the issues. But this is going to persist for a couple of years. So that's that time element. What do we do with what's already been built and sitting there? It seems like the car manufacturers are going to move on and think about their future builds and probably take parts off of the past and maybe crush the other ones. We've already seen that in some cases, Ford being an example, that they basically crushed, removed engines and I think transmissions and tires off of some things and got basically, a push for 2021 builds and thinking about 2022 now. So there's two things how long does this kind of persist and how does it impact us over time? But then what do we do, to your point? We got these machines sitting there and about ready to go to be sold. You would hopefully hear sometime that, that'll get resolved. And I guess you'd sell them as a little older, no hours, but older machines. But we'll see. That's going to be based on that manufacturer. What I will tell you is, no doubt about it, majority of the manufacturers, whether they're large equipment manufacturers or short line equipments, have cut back on their lines and the hours and what they're doing because of the shortage.
Yeah, that's insane to think about. Just hard to imagine. Wow. And you talked about no displays, which I think leads us into the next point of discussion we want to have. And talking with you previously, we've mentioned taking off GPS receivers at night because those are in short supply. So what are some other things that farmers should be doing to reduce risk of breakdown or even loss of equipment, securing the equipment that you do have?
Without a doubt, I would treat on equipment, your GPS receivers and displays as almost gold. I would try and keep them secure. If you're not operating for a few days, whether you get your machine back in the shop and lock it up, to if it's going to sit out and be somewhat in a place, take it off. I've heard about receivers being stolen in some cases because they are a hot commodity. You cannot buy, in a lot of cases, from these OEMs receivers today, for example. And like I said, some of the displays are in short supply. And so take care of that. If that's an important component for your operation, if I'm using guidance, if I'm using map yield, and potentially I'm moving that from my harvester to the tractor for planting, I need to keep those secure. I think about that not only currently, but when harvest is over, I'd encourage you to take those off and put those in a secure location, whether that's in the shop office, back at home, but keep them in good working order, keep them out of potentially mice and other things getting involved into them potentially. Treat these displays and this technology, the components of it, as gold. They are a hot commodity. And if you don't believe me, go out on things like Ag Talk or other places and try and buy something. And if it's available, check the price on it. It's pretty expensive right now, if you can get it even. Some other things, I think about harvesting. Number one, your maintenance schedule is critical. I want to keep that machine in good operating conditions. I want to inspect that machine probably daily. Okay, if I'm thinking about the combine, my recommendations is when you finish the day, get out, and the first thing you should do is clean that machine off. And whether it's a gas powered or electric powered, leaf blower, get you one of those and clean the header off, clean the feeder house off, get up in the engine compartment, clean all that stuff out of there. That's hopefully going to reduce the potential of any kind of fire or issues like that. Secondly, what that does is, at least in how I look at it, I come back in the morning normally and refuel and kind of do my maintenance before we get started. That machine is clean. I can walk around that machine. I can inspect that machine for any kind of leaks, in particular oil. I can inspect my PTO shafts and all my grease points and bearings. I can do a lot better job of inspecting those when I got a clean machine. If I clean it off in the morning, it's just going to be dustier. That's one more thing I got to do in the morning. But I like cleaning that machine off as soon as we get done at night. It doesn't matter. And, if you're running corn, it's 11 o'clock, clean it off real good, use a leaf blower. And that way, when you come back in the morning and kind of refuel and maintenance the machine, but inspecting and keeping up with your maintenance schedule and really keeping eyes on those points that of a concern is a big thing. The other thing we need to note is, because of this parts shortage, number one, either get parts ordered and have them ready to go, have them on your service truck and ready to go. If you're getting low, I would order them now. That could be anything from, things along the sickle bar to, bearings to things like that are related to either to the header or to the machine itself. But also think about high wear points like augers, and don't be surprised that, an unloading auger, you can't find it out there. And so what are you going to do? I'm going to have to basically rebuild and deal with, a wore out auger to keep either my machine running or have it ready to go for next year as well. So think about augers and what I'm going to do to kind of rebuild them, because in some cases those are in pretty short supply if available at all right now.
That's all really good advice, John. But to kind of close out here, you mentioned earlier that, we're in harvest, so that's one of our top focuses right now, but this is something you see persisting. So as we look forward to spring and planting seasons, what actions should we be taking right now to be ready and avoid problems?
Well, I think there's two things there, Elizabeth. Number one, if I'm someone that's trading equipment this winter, whether that's new or trading up or buying new equipment, number one, personally, if I'm a farmer, I would not let my existing equipment and my existing technology leave the farm until I have the replacement there. And that includes both the technology. So we talked about the displays and GPS receivers as two examples of that. I would make sure that I've got the GPS, I got a display, and I got the machine sitting on my farm that's a replacement before I let go any of machine to go in, if I'm selling it back or trading it in, whatever it might be. So that would be my one recommendation looking forward to the winter, is making sure whatever's being replaced, that the complete system and technology is there before I allow what I existingly have leave the farm. Secondly, as we look forward, I think there's several things, and I think most everyone knows this. Number one, we're sitting here and we're still several months out from planting, but I would highly recommend, if you don't have your planter already taken care of and ready to go for the spring, you need to get started on that pretty quickly. And if you got parts that you normally order, that's disc, bearings, linkages, whatever that might be that that you need to replace, you get on that right now. But I'm telling you, if you're a planter and you don't have your parts in the house right now to go through your planter this winter, if you're doing it yourself, or as long as the whoever, if you do that and pay someone to go through your planter and get it ready, whether it's technology or it's actually parts that you plan to replace on that, those need to be sourced now. My fret is, if you wait till January or February and say, oh shoot, I need to get some new disc blades to replace the openers, those may not be available, come early next year. In some cases, they're pretty limited today. So I think, sitting here today, not only are we trying to get this harvest done, but I think you need to be thinking about the planter, and I think you need to be thinking about your inputs. And maybe, this is possibly a stretch for some. If I'm going to buy inputs, then I maybe want to get them purchased and placed in my shop today, so they're on the farm ready to go. I mean, we're in a shortage of glyphosate. Fungicides are going to be tough to source. I mean, there's these crop protection products are limited, and that's something I need to be thinking about right now.
Yeah, and the price of inputs too sounds like it's just going to continue to increase, which is a whole nother topic that we should probably look into. But it's crazy times, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, and we're sitting here talking about concerns here for this fall and thinking about 2022. I just want to, emphasize from the way I kind of read what the situation is. It's not going to get any better through 2023. So, I just want to, kind of emphasize to everyone that, we're talking about planning, for example. I got to be ready. I got to have my planner ready, but I don't see this, we're not going to, this situation in terms of supply chain and workers and transportation concerns and all that, this is going to persist into 2023. And so as a farmer, I need to be thinking and, getting through next year, what's my decisions, what's my cropping plan given the current conditions, current pricing and commodity, commodity pricing is good, but to your point, there's some things that cost quite a bit more. So what am I going to do about nitrogen and potash and my phosphorus? But I need to also be projecting out what's my plan for 2023, because I don't think this is going to be resolved by then. And so thinking about equipment, parts, inputs, I need to be thinking about what my plan already is for 2022. But I think it's very easy. I need to be thinking 2023, what am I going to do for that as well?
Well, John, this was awesome advice. Not something that we necessarily want to hear, but something that we need to hear. So appreciate your time and the information you provided. If people want to learn more or reach out to you, what are some resources you have for them?
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is probably the quickest way to get a hold of me, and that's Fulton.20. That's FULTON.20 at OSU.edu, and be happy to connect and entertain any questions or concerns that you may have.
All right. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode.
Hey, podcast listeners. Just a reminder to give us a like or subscribe so you know when we release new episodes. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to leave us a review also. We appreciate the comments.